Hey guys, how are you all doing today? My name is Basit, and I very recently got into this habit of learning coding. And because I started with learning Python in high school, I decided that I'm going to continue and learn Python as best as I can. And so, alongside learning Python, I decided to create a beginner's guide to document my journey and have something to refer back to. And it struck me one day, maybe I should create videos about whatever I document in the guide so that people who might want to learn Python but don't know exactly how and where to start can have a starting point. So, from one beginner to another, if you're looking into learning Python, first of all, great job. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you're able to learn Python as and become a professional. But I hope this guide or these sets of videos are going to be helpful to you. Now, keep in mind, I cannot recommend enough that you, alongside watching videos on YouTube and doing your own thing here and there in Python, please, if you can, try any of the free courses available on the internet. They are so helpful because, unlike a video, they will tailor every exercise to you. And the solutions that you get to those exercises will be, you know, for you instead of just doing generally through a video. So, if you can, there are many free resources available where you don't have to spend a single dollar. I would recommend doing one of the free courses on Codecademy because that's where I got started. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right into this. So, in this video, I am going to just touch upon three things. Number one, print statements, which are arguably one of the most basic commands in not just Python, but in all of programming. Number two, strings and what they are, and the different ways to display them. And number three, I'm going to give a brief into variables. So let's get started. Like I said, let's start with print. What exactly is print and what's its function? If I put print here, what you notice here is a few things. Number one is obviously the function print. And then you'll notice these brackets, the parentheses. And then within these brackets, there is something that's written. What the print statement does is it essentially commands Python that I want you to display on the screen, on the console, whatever is within these brackets. So now if I run this, Control R, as you can see on the console here, Python will display the words hello world. And the reason for that is because that's just the function of print. Now, one thing that I want to point out before we move forward is make sure whatever course you're doing, make sure you recognize the Python version that that course is using. For example, the Codecademy course that I did was using Python 2. Python 3 is publicly available now, and while for the most part they're similar, there are a few key differences in Python 3. For instance, the way print works. In Python 3, parentheses are a must. Print function will not run if you do not use parentheses. For example, let me remove these parentheses. As you can already see, there are squiggly lines that appear because Python's like, what do you want me to do here? If I run this, syntax error, missing parentheses and call to print. So what that essentially means is if you don't put parentheses in Python 3, Python is not going to know what you want it to do. Now, don't worry too much about syntax error. That's a there are multiple types of errors, and that's a particular error. We're going to touch upon that in a future video. But all you need to know is parentheses are a must in Python 3. Now, that's a print statement overview. Now I want to focus on what's inside these brackets, the strings. Let's do that. So okay, as you can see, there are two different quotation marks that I've put, double quotation marks and single quotation marks. What is a string? A string is a type of text. It's essentially text in Python. It's a type of data set, and it's called a string because it's essentially what it is. The words and the letters are strings, and so when you put something within quotation marks, what you're telling Python is this is just a string of words. There's no function in here. There's nothing else. There's no command in here. It is just a string of normal words. Let me give you an example. Let's say I put the word print here. What you'll notice is print becomes purple because it's an inbuilt function. If I put print within these parentheses, you'll notice that it doesn't become purple because this line is telling Python to use the function print. And this line in Python is telling Python that this is just the word print. That's it. Normal English word print. And so is this. This is the same thing. When you want to create strings in Python, you can either use double quotation marks or you can use single quotation marks. It's really your choice. However, there is one thing that you will have to be careful of when you use single quotation marks, and that is using words with apostrophes. Let me demonstrate. Let's say there is a phrase called "there is a fox." There is a fox. So what you notice now is this is not a string because it's not within quotation marks, and because is another inbuilt function here, and that's why you see it's colored orange. So what Python thinks is you're trying to use the function is and not the word is. If I put this within quotation marks here, now all of this is colored green because now to Python these are just English words, not functions. What if I want to type "there's a fox"? With double quotation marks, it's no problem. But if I use single quotation marks, what do you notice now? Python thinks that just the word "there" is in a string, nothing else. It cuts off everything else. This is a real problem when you use single quotation marks. The way you circumvent this problem is by using a forward slash. So now if I put forward slash in between "there" and the apostrophe, there you go. As you can see, now Python recognizes that this is an apostrophe and the string is everything from T to X. And now once again, if I print this, it's going to print the line "there's a fox." So that's a little bit about strings. Now obviously this is not, print was pretty self-explanatory and there wasn't much to cover there, but with strings this is just scratching the surface. There's a lot more to strings. For example, there are multiple functions. Let's say you want to take two pieces of two strings. two strings of words or letters and you want to merge them. How do you do that? There's a function for that. Let's say you want to, take all the letters in a particular string and convert all of them into uppercase or lowercase. How do you do that? There are functions for that as well. So there are a lot of functions. Or you want to find out the length of a string. So let's say a string is 500 words, but you don't want to sit there count. How do you find out the length of that string? There's a function for that. So what I'm trying to say is strings has a lot more content that cannot be covered in this video, and I will be sure to make a separate video for that. But that's the basic of strings. And now, last but not least, I want to touch upon another basic concept in Python, which is known as variables. Now, printing strings is well and good, but what happens when you want to make Python a little more interactive? Let's say you want to ask the user of your program a question, and then you want to use that answer that they give you elsewhere in the program. How do you do that? The way you do that is you create a variable, and whatever answer to your question the user puts, you store that answer in a variable. A variable is essentially, in the most basic sense, a store of value. Now, the value can be anything from an integer to a string, etc., etc. One thing that I want to highlight here is something called a Boolean. A Boolean in Python is a special type of variable. True, false. What you see here is true and false. When you see they're different colors, they're orange color. The reason for that is because Python considers these to be Booleans. A Boolean is a special type of variable that can only have one of two values, either true or false, or in integer terms, 1 and 0. Anything else, any other value, and it's not a Boolean anymore. Right? So that's one thing. Other than that, you can have any number of variables and they can have any value. It's totally up to you. Let's do that. Let's get started. Let's learn a little about variables. Let's say I want to create a program that asks the user for their name. How do we do that? If I just say input is another function. If anything that I put after this in strings, it's going to ask the user, what is your name? Now, when I print this, it's going to ask me here. When you see there's a fox, I can't type anything. If you hear, I'm typing on my keyboard, but nothing comes in because there's no input there. There was no input. But now when I run this, I will be able to type something. Let's have a look. There, as you can see, it types, what is your name? So here, I can input something with my keyboard. I'll input my name. I ran it, I put enter, but it just says process finished. Because this by itself does absolutely nothing. If I want to ask the user for their name and then I want to print out their name, when I say print, what do I put here? I can't put input. It's going to give me an error. As you can see. What this essentially means, it's not an error, but basically when you say print input, Python is just saying built-in function input because it's essentially telling you what input is. So the way you store the answer of the user is by using a variable. If I put name is equal to input, so now name is a variable, and whatever answer the user puts for the question, what is your name, will be stored in the variable name. And now if I put in print name, now we'll see what happens. If I run this, what is your name? As you can see, Python asked me for my name, and when I said pass it, it input that, it input that into the variable name. It stored it into the variable name, and then when I said print name, it print out my answer. And this works with anything, as you can see. Let's say I put Jack, it's going to output Jack. So that's a brief about variables. Variables are essentially a store of value. Now, let's say, what if I put numbers? I don't want to put letters. If I run this, what is your name? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to input. So within a variable, you can input anything from integers, which are just numbers, to strings, which are words and letters with quotation marks, and it's all going to be accepted. Now, there are, of course, ways to prevent that. There are functions that will essentially tell Python only accept strings or only accept words for this particular question. But that's a bit more advanced, and that would not be covered right now. It'll be covered in a future video. So guys, that was my first video on introduction to Python. And just as a, just as a summary, we covered today the print statement, which, as I mentioned in the beginning, well, arguably one of the most basic statements, commands, or functions in Python. We covered strings fairly briefly, but at least we got an idea of what strings are. And lastly, we covered, again briefly, what are variables. Now, I intend to make this a full-fledged series, so I will go into more depth about strings as well as variables, because even in variables, what happens if a certain variable contains name is equal to 7? If this is basically, this is an integer known as 7. This is an integer. What if I want to convert this into a string? So there's a whole host of functions that you can do with variables and strings. But like I said, that'll be for a future video. If you like this video, please hit the like button down below, subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Have a great day.